who we have invited joining us. Ashley is a Senior Research Fellow at the National Centre for Education and Training for Addiction at Flinders University. She has over 7 years of experience in research and evaluation related to alcohol, tobacco and other drugs, with work that spans the spectrum from prevention and policy through to treatment and workforce development. And she leads the Centre's current program of work relating to zero alcohol beverages, parents and adolescents. So we're going to hear a bit more about that today. I'm also delighted to share that we have 2 panelists joining us for our discussion at the end of the webinar today. So firstly, joining us, we have Mia Miller. Mia is a PhD candidate at the Menzies School of Health Research and a research officer at the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre. Her current work focuses on middle-aged women's alcohol consumption, but also on the marketing of zero alcohol products and the potential harms and benefits of these products for priority groups, including people who are in recovery from alcohol use disorder. And excitingly, Mia is the convener of the International No and Low Alcohol Research Network. So there's a really strong grasp on what's happening internationally in this space as well. Secondly, we have Matt Craig. Matt Craig is a director at New South Wales Health Centre for Alcohol and Other Drugs, leading their policy, research and prevention programs. Matt has a very extensive history working in alcohol and drug policy. He was the lead author of Australia's current national drug strategy. He lectures on policy and economics at Flinders University, and he holds a master's in public policy from Carnegie Mellon, where he advised the Obama White House on investment in social innovation. As I said to Matt just before, I learned some new things about him, a very impressive track record as well. So we're going to have some time at the end for questions for Ashley and for our panelists, so please do send them through. If you are going to ask questions, feel free to add them at any point during the webinar, but if you could put them in the Q&A function, not the chat, and I will do my best to present as many of them as possible to our panel at the end. I'm anticipating there's going to be a lot of questions coming through, a lot of discussion, so I may not get through them all, but I'll do my best. But that is more than enough from me. I'm going to invite Ashley to turn on her camera and teach us some more about zero alcohol beverages. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for inviting me, and hello. Can I just check that I'm coming up all right? Excellent, cool. Thanks for that introduction. And yes, I today am talking about zero alcohol drinks, and particularly what we're thinking about, what we're finding about for them for adolescents. I've put a somewhat, I guess, provocative question up there. Are they normalising everything about alcohol for adolescents? I cannot guarantee you I'm going to convincingly answer it by the end of this, but I'll talk you through what we've found so far in relation to that and where our thinking is going into the future. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands we're meeting across today. I'm on Kaurna land here in Adelaide today, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So just a brief outline, I'll go through some background about what we're talking about with zero alcohol drinks and some of the research, not so much that's been done so far. I'll talk through the findings from the 2 studies we've done so far with parents of adolescents and what they're thinking about and doing around these zero alcohol drinks. And then I'll talk through some preliminary thinking and work that we've doing around adolescents in particular. So zero alcohol drinks, what are we talking about here? I'm sure that a lot of the people online are quite familiar with these now. They are these products that look and taste quite similar to the alcoholic counterparts, but they have no or very low amounts of alcohol in them. And a lot of them are coming from parent alcohol brands, like this example with the Heineken here. And all you're really seeing visually with the difference here is just the inclusion of that little 0.0 on the label. Otherwise, they're looking very, very similar. However, because of that low alcohol content, they're not regulated in the same way as alcoholic drinks. In Australia in particular, we're seeing them appear in places that we wouldn't normally see alcohol. So things like the supermarkets, the convenience stores, and we're also seeing quite a bit of advertising for these drinks. So why are we thinking about these drinks? So, I mean, on face value, when you first look at them, these drinks seem like probably quite a good thing. They're a way that people can replace alcohol consumption while still kind of fitting in with the traditions we have, particularly in Australia, around drinking being kind of central to social occasions. And so, maybe they're useful. But concerns have been raised that because of this visual similarity and the way that they're evading these regulations in Australia, they might actually, when we start thinking about groups that we are normally restricting availability of alcohol to, like adolescents, then we might want to think about these drinks a bit differently. So I do want to emphasize that this is a growing market. We're seeing a lot of articles like this one popping up here going, zero alcohol drinks growing, they're exploding with big forecasts of growth in the zero alcohol market. But I also want to emphasize that it's still a very small part of the market. So we're seeing growth, but it's from a small base, and they're still pretty small relative to what we're seeing with alcohol sales. It's not just in Australia where these are growing, there's also growth trends in other high-income countries, but there are some countries, particularly in Europe, where these products have been a bit more established for a bit longer, particularly Germany, Spain. So there's I guess less of the novelty factor there. So why as someone, I guess, such as myself, who has a background in public health, interested in and thinking about these drinks? So on the one hand, as I said, these drinks are of potential benefit. They might substitute for alcohol consumption, and that might mean we're getting actually a reduction overall in alcohol-related harms. However, some of the concerns that have been raised have been that they might increase the exposure to alcohol branding, particularly because we're seeing so many of these products coming from alcohol brands. A concern that it might encourage earlier interest in alcohol among young people because they're getting more exposure to these drinks. They're things that they can purchase, at least at the moment. And then also some concerns that they might actually act as gateway drinks. So they might actually help adolescents to develop an interest in, a taste for alcohol, and lead them to starting drinking alcohol products earlier, which is something that we don't really want to see because we know that alcohol is particularly harmful when consumed by young people, particularly because of those neurodevelopmental impacts. Now, I do have question marks on all of those statements, though, because currently, really, where we are at this point is we've got a lot of ideas about what might be going on, but not so much in the way of research evidence. So we're hoping that we can improve on that as we go. I do want to flag that there was this World Health Organization policy brief that came out last year, and this was very much coming down on the side of the concerns about these zero and low alcohol beverages. So concerns that were flagging included that they might normalize a culture of alcohol consumption. They might blur some conflicts of interest in policy development, particularly if industry's being involved in the development of policy around these drinks. A big concern around the use of these drinks for alibi marketing. So basically serving as ads for alcohol, more so than the zero alcohol drinks. Concerns that they might mislead minors, pregnant women, abstainers, particularly when you're talking about the low alcohol versions of these. So some of these drinks do still contain small amounts of alcohol. So if you're trying to avoid alcohol altogether, might not be the best idea. And also some concerns about the potential to lead to new consumption occasions. So we've seen some marketing of these drinks. The marketing's focused on the idea that you might be able to drink them in situations where you wouldn't normally be drinking alcohol, for example, at work, while you're driving, those sorts of things. But the report also emphasizes overall that the evidence is quite limited. So I guess it's a call to action to get some more evidence in this space. So what does the research tell us so far? So there has been a good amount of research coming out from the UK, particularly focusing on adults. So with some research showing that that the households that are purchasing no and low alcohol beers are primarily replacing the same branded higher strength products, so that we are seeing some substitution going on, which is a positive. That research, some of that research using UK purchasing data has also found that the purchases are most common among younger and more affluent households, which is worth noting because it does suggest that if there are some public health benefits from these drinks, so they might be limited towards those more affluent kind of households, but they're also more common amongst those buying the most alcohol overall. And there has been some modelling that suggested that the public health impacts from substitution of zero alcohol beverages via the higher strength beverages are probably on the small to minimal side. And that's because even though we are seeing some substitution going on, the percentage of the total market that these drinks make up is still so small. So even with the growth, it's still very small. So not seeing a lot of impact at a population level. But so far, there's not really been all that much research looking at young people or adolescents. And there's also not been that much research focusing more on the marketing or the alibi marketing aspects of these drinks. But that's where really, I guess, a lot of our concerns, as opposed to the potential benefits from substitution, a lot of our concerns are really coming around this sort of space. So we've been doing a little bit of work in this space, and that's what I want to talk you through today. So our work so far has been focusing on parents' perceptions of zero alcohol drinks for adolescents. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the great project team that we've had across this project, both from NCETA and our collaborators, and also acknowledge our funders. So this project was funded through an NHMRC Early Career Fellowship to Jackie Bowden, and also supported through Cancer Council SA's Beat Cancer Project. So this project, the funding for that project overall was more broadly aimed at parental supply of alcohol, but as part of that, we've included some work here on zero alcohol drinks. So yeah, why focus on parents? Why haven't we just gone straight to the adolescents? Well, parents are really central to shaping alcohol-related attitudes and access to alcohol for adolescents. So they're really playing quite a key role in what adolescents end up thinking and doing around alcohol. From that UK data I mentioned earlier, we have also found that, it has also been found that parents are more likely to consume zero alcohol beverages themselves, so might have a bit more awareness of these drinks than the broader population. And they're also the main suppliers of alcohol to those Australian adolescents who drink. So the latest data we have on this from the Australian Secondary Schools Alcohol and Driver Drugs Survey found that 47% of those students who had recently drunk alcohol got that alcohol from a parent. So by far the most common source of alcohol. And the other thing to note here is that that's been increasing over the last couple of decades. So parents are becoming even more of a common source of alcohol. So they're really important to think about when we're trying to think about what adolescents do about alcohol. And thus, from that, what they do about zero alcohol. So we've undertaken 2 studies focused on parents. We undertook some qualitative interviews with parents of adolescents, looking at their awareness and perceptions of zero alcohol beverages and their use by adolescents. And we also undertook a survey of parents of adolescents, and that focused more on whether parents were providing these drinks, intending to provide them, and what was sort of shaping that provision. So our first study. I will just flag here that QR code on the screen. If you follow it, will take you to a link to all the papers I'm going to refer to today. So thanks very much to Nathan Harrison, who was the lead author on this first paper, for putting that QR code together as well. So in this study, our interviews with parents, we were aiming at understanding what Australians' parents' perceptions of zero alcohol drinks and their use by adolescents was. We had some purposive sampling, so we focused not on Australians all across the country. So we focused specifically on WA, New South Wales and Victoria. And the reason for that was that I don't know if everyone knows, but Western Australia's had a lot more active running of social marketing campaigns around alcohol and adolescents and around parental supply of alcohol. So we were interested in contrasting WA with New South Wales and Victoria. I will note that didn't particularly come up as that salient to the zero alcohol drinks. So I note that and we will move on. We conducted interviews with 38 parents over Zoom. And we use reflexive thematic analysis to analyse them. So I'll take you through the key themes that we found. So the first one was that zero alcohol drinks are really seen as adult drinks. So as this parent said here, it's totally unnecessary for the adolescents. They'd really have to ask themselves, why am I drinking this? Because it doesn't actually taste that good. The parents that we spoke to did see that zero alcohol drinks were quite appropriate for use by adults, particularly if they were trying to reduce their drinking, but they really didn't see that much of a role for them for adolescents. They thought adolescents wouldn't be likely to like the taste. They thought that while they might tolerate the taste of alcohol for the sake of getting into an intoxicated state, that they wouldn't really tolerate it if they weren't going to get that intoxicated state. They did say maybe there's a role for when they're on that cusp of adulthood. For example, if you've got a 17-year-old going to an 18th birthday party, if there's going to be alcohol there, then maybe it's a way to head off the alcohol. But in general, definitely seen as adult drinks, not for adolescents. So it's different, of course, to soft drinks, where they are seen as drinks for adolescents. The second theme was that zero alcohol drinks may normalise alcohol consumption. So, that quote that I put in to the title, it's normalise everything about alcohol for adolescents. There was something one of the parents said in this study. They also mentioned things like it's kind of get that being cool kind of link. They were also concerned not just that supplying zero alcohol, but also drinking the zero alcohol drinks themselves in front of their teens would really be role modeling and endorsing alcohol drinking behaviors. So they definitely saw these things as very alcohol-like and making signals about alcohol. So those concerns were driven by that visual similarity, and they were particularly concerned for those products that shared brands with alcohol products. Parents also expressed concerns that it could be a precursor to alcohol initiation. So they unprompted brought up this gateway concern. The quote we used is for the paper itself, that it works like a gateway drug, they're starting with zero alcohol and they want to try the real thing. So parents were concerned that drinking zero alcohol drinks as an adolescent might actually accelerate alcohol initiation, provide a way to act out alcohol consumption. Parents were concerned that these drinks were appearing in places that are frequented by young people, like the soft drink aisles in the supermarkets. Interestingly, some parents also made unprompted comparisons to vaping. So vaping is obviously something that a lot of parents are quite sensitive to at the moment, and there's been a lot of talk about vaping as a gateway to smoking. Parents made that same comparison here between zero alcohol drinks and alcohol. On the flip side, some parents did talk to the idea that zero alcohol drinks could actually be useful, could help to prepare adolescents for alcohol. So like this parent here said, I'd allow them to have a sip to get that need to know what it tastes like out of the way. Some parents thought that it might be useful to have these drinks at special occasions or social events, as it's a way to kind of teach adolescents that this is an appropriate time to drink alcohol, but without actually giving them the alcohol, because they're aware of the concerns with that for adolescents. But I do want to point out that what was quite interesting with this theme was parents did talk about it, but they often hedged it. This wasn't really like the main thing they saw about these drinks. Like if pushed, they're like, oh, well, I guess it could be useful in this way. Maybe it could be useful in this way. But there was, it wasn't really the first thought that most parents did go to. And the other thing is that those parents who did provide mostly said they were only providing sips and not full drinks. So even though it's not the intoxicating element, the high alcohol content here, parents still thought it wasn't a good idea to be providing full drinks because of that normalisation role. And then finally, parents did talk a bit about the healthiness of these drinks, or otherwise. So they sort of came around to the conclusion that they're probably going to be healthier than alcohol because they haven't got the alcohol content. They weren't quite sure how they compared to soft drinks. They weren't really sure about things like the sugar content, energy content, and that sort of thing. But ultimately, definitely less healthy than water. And things like water or potentially the juices and the sugar-free soft drinks were really seen as what they thought the adolescents should actually be drinking. So that's what we got from the parents, and we went and talked to them in some in-depth interviews. But we followed that up with a survey, so we could, I guess, find out a bit more broadly about what was going on with parents. So this was a survey of nearly 1,200 parents, and we asked questions around what they thought about zero alcohol drinks and whether they were providing them and intending them to write them for their adolescents. So that was the research question, and some of the factors that we looked at to see whether they were associated with parents' provision or provision intentions, were their beliefs about zero alcohol drinks, about what they could do for adolescents. We also looked at factors associated with provision of alcohol, and the reason we did this was because from those interview themes, we were really seeing some similarities in what parents are thinking about. So things like that they that some parents saw that they might have a role in introducing alcohol in a safe way, that they kind of focused on sips rather than full drinks. They saw that as minimizing harm. So there seemed to be a lot of, I guess, some overlaps in the thinking parents engaged in around these drinks. So we decided we'd have a look at factors associated with provision of alcohol to see if they were also associated with zero alcohol provision, and some demographic factors. So we conducted an online cross-sectional survey of nearly 1,200 Australian parents, and these are parents of 12 to 17-year-olds where that child lived with them at least some of the time. They were recruited from an online panel provider, and the questions that we included around zero alcohol drinks were included as part of a broader study on parents' beliefs about adolescent alcohol use and supply of alcohol. And this picture up here was the picture we gave them to explain what we meant by zero alcohol drinks. And we were quite clear that these are the drinks that resemble the alcohol products, not things like tea, coffee, soft drinks, non-alcoholic drinks. So what did we find? So I'll talk you through what we saw about the beliefs about the zero alcohol beverages first, and then I'll get to the provision. So we basically gave the parents a range of statements about things that you might believe or not believe about zero alcohol drinks. So that they might, on one hand, that they might influence an adolescent to drink alcohol more regularly. So that gateway kind of idea, the relative harmfulness, and some of those kind of occasions where potentially it could be useful for adolescents to use them for special occasions to avoid alcohol at parties and that sort of thing. So let me just talk you through this chart. So firstly, I wanted to flag that just over half of parents did agree that zero alcohol drinks could influence an adolescent to drink alcohol more regularly. So parents are certainly concerned about this normalising and this potential gateway effect. Nearly half did agree that the products are also less harmful than alcoholic drinks. There were kind of mixed opinions about the rest of these statements. So things like they're avoiding the alcohol at parties, or useful if they want to pretend they're drinking alcohol or to drink less. Parents, I guess what I take away from that was that parents really weren't quite sure what to make of this kind of idea. Which is probably fair enough, because I'm not sure that we really know that yet. So what did they actually do then, given this level of uncertainty? Well, we found that only a small proportion of parents had actually provided these zero alcohol drinks to their adolescents, so about 12% in this sample. But a much greater proportion were either saying that, yes, they definitely provide these before they turn 18, so about 22%, and then another fifth was saying, not sure, maybe, we might provide them. So a lot of parents are at least somewhat open to the possibility that these are something they can give to their adolescent before they're an adult. So we used a logistic regression to have a look at what was associated with this provision. So firstly, in terms of the beliefs about zero alcohol drinks, beliefs that zero alcohol beverages have benefits for adolescents. So that was we collapsed, we created a scale score out of responses to all of those sort of positive statements from the previous slide, and beliefs that it was acceptable to drink these drinks before the age of 18 years. They were parents who believed that were more likely to have provided these drinks. However, parents that believe that zero alcohol beverages can influence an adolescent to drink alcohol more regularly were neither no more or less likely to provide the drinks, which we're a little bit surprised by. Factors associated with provision of alcohol. So those parents who had provided alcoholic beverages were also more likely to have provided zero alcohol beverages. So we're talking about a somewhat similar group of parents here. Also, those parents who incorrectly understood the Australian alcohol guideline, which recommends that before the age of 18 years, you don't drink alcohol, those parents who didn't get that right were more likely to have provided zero alcohol drinks. But parents' alcohol consumption and their parenting style were not associated. And then in terms of demographics, households with a moderate household income, so that was more than 60,000 but less than 150,000, and parents with a university education were more likely to have provided. So there's a similar kind of demographics to, I guess, what we're seeing as who's drinking these drinks. But parent age, parent adolescent gender weren't associated. So that's associations with provision. I also go through provision intentions because they're just slightly different. So firstly, I've got some little arrows to help make clearer what's different. So firstly, that belief that zero alcohol beverages can influence an adolescent to drink alcohol more regularly, parents who thought that were less likely to intend to provide. So I think that there's some greater consistency there between the beliefs and the intentions, which is what we generally see between a sort of attitude, behavior, intention kind of framework. It could be that they were more likely to have provided the alcohol without thinking too much about it, like just, oh, here, have a sip when they're drinking one. Whereas the intentions, it's more closely linked to the attitudes. When talking about intentions, parenting style then became associated with provision intentions. So parents with a permissive or authoritative parenting style. So that's a permissive style is where parents, I guess, privilege the desires of their child. And authoritative is where they put more guidelines in the way, but they'll negotiate with the child. Whereas an authoritarian is more of a laying down the rules kind of style. So first two more likely to intend to provide, the last one less likely to. University education wasn't significant in this model. Metropolitan location was, and parent age was. So as parents got older, they were less likely to intend to provide these drinks. So what do we make of all these findings? So firstly, I'd say that what we're seeing is that parents are kind of skeptical about these drinks, but there's a lot of uncertainty about what to make of them. We could see that in the attitude statements and also the interviews, but there is a good proportion that are considering provision nonetheless. But there is some confusion around the drinks, some conflicting views. Are these a gateway, or maybe there is a little bit of a role, might be a little bit less harmful than alcohol. So it suggests that maybe there is a need for some guidance for parents, that some parents would appreciate some advice on this topic. We found some overlap between zero alcohol and alcohol provision, which says we're probably seeing a bit of a similar group of parents involved in both here. And I guess what we would advise from all that is to parents take a precautionary approach. Advise parents against provision because of these concerns that they might normalise alcohol consumption and accelerate an interest in alcohol. And I think the other thing that I didn't put on this slide that is a potential implication is that this sort of skepticism and the concern that these parents are really expressing around alcohol, zero alcohol drinks normalising alcohol consumption, says that parents at least might be receptive to the idea that that these drinks might be suited to regulating in similar ways to alcohol. So that's our work with parents, but what about the adolescents themselves? What are they thinking? Well, I think that there's two ways to think about zero alcohol drinks and adolescents to go think it through. And the first of these is to think about these drinks as drinks. So are adolescents drinking them, and what happens if they do? Does drinking them make them more likely to start drinking alcohol? And the other way to think about these drinks and adolescents is to think about these drinks as ads. So given the strong physical resemblance, the use of a lot of the alcohol brands, it's possible that mere exposure to the drinks, and not necessarily even drinking them, just being exposed to them, might be affecting adolescents' attitudes and consumption intentions towards alcohol. So I think that's a distinction I wanted to make there, because we don't just want to be understanding whether adolescents are drinking these drinks or interested in these drinks. We want to understand how they're being exposed to them in general. So this particular ad I've put up, some of you might be aware of. It was subject to a complaint under the Alcohol Beverages Advertising Code. And this complaint was actually upheld on the basis that the highly similar branding between the Heineken Zero product and the Heineken product gave the impression that the alcohol product was appropriate to consume while driving. So this concern about that these drinks can be mixed up is certainly there in the community, and is worth bearing in mind when we design our research. So in terms of zero alcohol drinks, thinking about zero alcohol drinks as drinks, I'm not going to talk any further about that today. We have collaborated on some work in that space, and we're hoping it will come out soon, but the findings are not yet public. So for the rest of this talk, I'm just going to focus on zero alcohol drinks as ads. So we've just recently published this commentary and looking at zero alcohol beverages and brand extensions in particular. And the question we were asking was basically, or exploring was, are these really just a vehicle for promoting the parent alcohol brands? Now we wrote this commentary because we don't really have any research specifically around zero alcohol beverages on this topic yet. But there is a broader marketing literature on brand extensions and how they work, and also some research around other non-alcoholic products that have alcohol brands on them. So that's what we wanted to address here, and I'm just going to talk you through what we discussed. So when we're talking about brand extensions, what we mean is where you use an established brand name on a new product. And in general, the reason that marketers often are interested in doing this is because it's a good way to encourage product trial. So it leverages all the existing imagery and associations and awareness people have for that parent brand. Those brand attributes transfer to the extension product, and hopefully people are more likely to try that extension product. So those effects are stronger when there is good brand fit or congruence between the parent brand and the extension product. And I highlight that because, I mean, these drinks are very similar. This is probably a case of good fit. But the other really interesting thing from the literature is that the broader brand extension literature is that it shows that the effects do go both ways. That brand associations that people develop with an extension product can also influence what their beliefs are about a parent brand. And that's quite relevant, I think, particularly for when we're thinking about adolescents who might not have that much experience with at least drinking the parent brand, and are being increasingly exposed to these ads and just the products sitting on the shelf, maybe their parents drinking them, for these zero alcohol drinks, because it's likely to also build the brand associations they have with that parent brand. So in terms of using brand extensions with alcohol brands in particular, there has been a little bit of research that's kind of relevant to this from the UK purchasing data. I'm just going to try and explain this here. So I guess the first thing to think is, well, are these brand extensions doing what the marketers would expect? Are they encouraging product trial? So what this study found was that households that had previously been buying a full strength version of one of these drinks, when a no or low alcohol version was introduced to the market, they were more likely to then go and buy that one. And then interestingly, those that did go and buy that one were then more likely to decrease their consumption of the full strength product. So yes, we're seeing product trial, and as I mentioned earlier, a little bit of substitution going on. What about how these drinks might influence associations with the parent brand? So what the researchers here did was they looked at households that had not bought the full strength version of the beer before. They then did go on to buy the newly introduced zero or low alcohol product. And then what they actually found was that those households were then actually less likely to go on to purchase the full strength brand, which is like at face value, oh, maybe we're a bit overly concerned here. Maybe these brand extensions aren't working that way. However, what I do want to flag with this is that this data is about purchase, whereas most of the findings from the brand extension literature about how the use of these brand extensions can influence your attitudes towards parent brands doesn't actually require you to purchase or drink the product for that effect to take place. So this is interesting, but it doesn't tell us the full picture because, as I said earlier, the actual size of the zero alcohol market is still very small. Lots of people are never going to purchase these drinks, but they probably still seeing the products on their supermarket shelves or the ads out and about. So what else can the prior literature tell us about how these brand extensions might be working? Well, there's been some interesting work come out of Thailand about the use of alcohol brands on non-alcoholic drinks. So not drinks like water they're not trying to resemble alcohol at all. And this research really showed that the young adults are still associating these brands primarily with the alcoholic drinks. They see the brand on the water and they're like, yep, that's for beer. There's also been some research looking at the use of alcohol brands on merchandise. So hats, t-shirts, this somewhat disturbingly scented fragrance here. And this study by Jones and colleagues found a significant association between owning this kind of alcohol branded merchandise and lifetime alcohol use. And they also conducted some focus groups with parents who hadn't necessarily thought about it that much before, but when prompted to think about this alcohol branding on these products, went, yeah, that probably is going to be normalising and creating favourable associations with alcohol. So given this body of evidence around brand extensions, what are some implications of this for policy and research? Well, firstly, does this mean we want to think about restrictions on advertising? And one of the possible avenues is that we actually want to think about applying restrictions to advertising at a brand level. So if a product comes from a parent alcohol brand, it then gets treated as like an alcohol product. We regulate any advertising in the same way. And the existing literature certainly seems to support a need to consider that. However, there's really a strong visual and taste resemblance that exists even in the absence of a brand. They're still packaged very much like alcohol. They look like alcohol. So there actually may be a need to consider going further than the brand level and actually considering whole product category regulation here. The literature and brand extensions also means that we should probably be thinking about restrictions on availability. We might want to think about whether minors, adolescents should be restricted from purchasing zero alcohol drinks in the same way that they are for alcoholic drinks. One limitation of that approach is that it doesn't necessarily deal with those exposure effects. So it might not limit exposure. Adolescents still might see them in shops, the ads, parents drinking them. So another possibility that could be considered is things like licensing requirements. So maybe these drinks should only be sold in places that alcohol is available as well. So you reduce that incidental exposure to minors. But then on the flip side, that also might reduce access to people who are genuinely trying to use these drinks to reduce their alcohol consumption and might not want to go into a place where alcohol is readily available. So some things to consider and balance up there. So we don't really have all the evidence we need to make all these policy decisions yet, and the model's really not clear. We do think we need some further research specific to zero alcohol drinks to help make some decisions in this space. Certainly I can't promise to come up with an ingenious solution to all of this, but I am going to tell you about a project we currently have underway that's taking a crack at the first question there. Do we need brand level or whole product category? So this is a project that's been funded through a grant by the Channel 7 Children's Research Foundation in South Australia. And basically in it, we're trying to look at whether these zero alcohol drinks are working as alcohol advertising in disguise, basically just working in similar ways to alcohol advertising to shape children's interests in attitudes towards consumption intentions towards alcohol. So in this study, we have a couple of research questions we're trying to address. And that is, does exposure to zero alcohol drinks in the advertising affect adolescents' attitudes and consumption intentions towards alcohol? And then what I'm hoping is going to be quite useful from a policy perspective is, does this effect differ between the zero alcohol drinks that feature this brand extensions and those that feature the unique brands? So are we seeing stronger effects if a parent alcohol brand is used? So our research plan for this study, we are looking at 15 to 17-year-olds in this study, and we're going to recruit them through an online panel. In the first study, we're using an experimental study design to investigate effects of exposure to zero alcohol products. So doing this through a reaction time experiment. And in study 2, we're going to undertake a cross-sectional study looking at effects of exposure to zero alcohol advertisements. So that's bringing me to the end of my presentation. So I just thought I'd go and revisit this question I posed at the start. So as I foreshadowed, I can't say convincingly that these drinks are definitely normalising everything about alcohol for adolescents. But what I can say is that parents are concerned that this might be going on. We've certainly seen a lot of policymakers and academics writing about how they're concerned that this might be going on. And what we're seeing from the broader marketing literature on brand extensions also suggests it's plausible this is going to go on. So I'm going to hark back to Mythbusters and call this one plausible, but hopefully we can continue to build our evidence base and get some stronger answers here. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. Thank you for your time today. I'm just going to plug this infographic here comes from a blog that my colleague Nathan Harrison and I wrote for In Touch, and particularly focusing on what parents might want to think about in this topic. So go have a look.
Round of applause. Thank you so much, Ashley. What a fantastic presentation. As I said, this is a very new area, very topical. And I mean, as you said, and as we know, parents have such a difficult time thinking about how to manage alcohol with young people already. I think zero alcohol beverages maybe have just added additional complexity to it, particularly from what you've shown. I think really helpful what you've shown as well, in terms of maybe having a more precautionary approach. We still need that evidence to behind it all, but maybe having a more precautionary approach to supplying to young people, and also thinking, yeah, those brand extensions are quite concerning. But let's move on. Please put your questions in the Q&A. We're going to kick off our panel now. I'm going to invite Matt and Mia to jump online. If you could turn your cameras on. So, all
Shall I
righty.
stop sharing?
Yes, Ashley, that would be great if you wanted to stop and we can have a look at all the faces. Okay, Mia, I'm going to kick off with you. Reflections on Ashley's presentation. Thoughts?
Well, yeah, thank you so much, Ashley, for that and for sharing your work. I was thinking while you're talking, I wanted to pick up on the work you've done looking at the brand extensions, which is so interesting. And that tension between products that are brand extensions or products that, as the industry refers to them as, they're new to world products, they don't have any alcohol branding. And data that we've collected at NDARC has kind of shown that it's about 50% in terms of the market, for 50% being these brand extensions, 50% being the new to world products. And the brand extension products are potentially harmful because of the exposure of the alcohol branding and logos. But what's interesting is that some of the international alcohol conglomerates, they have guidelines around how different zero alcohol products can be advertised. And there are different guidelines for a brand extension versus a new to world product. So obviously any industry guidelines, voluntary, not officially enforced, but I found it really interesting. So for example, these products that aren't affiliated with an alcohol brand can talk about the health benefits. They can talk about the fact that they're electrolyte enhanced. They can help with recovery. So there's this new trend of sports beers. So yeah, I guess that's my rhetorical question to everyone online to think about, is like, what are the possible implications of a product that looks and smells like alcohol claiming to have health benefits? And what does that mean for regulation of these products? Thanks. It was a really wonderful presentation.
Thanks, Mia. Always posing new questions for us to think about. And this is probably a perfect time to throw to Matt for your perceptions, thoughts, reflections as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. And thanks, Ashley. That was really amazing and really needed piece of research at the moment. This is kind of a new product. I mean, some versions have been around for a long time, but the way that it's expanding as a new product category has been very interesting. It's been hard to get definitive evidence on it in the policy space, and that has meant that in policy we've been trying to play catch up as the industry's growing and moving. And Ashley's really confirmed some of my concerns about this product category. So we should be, as a sector, we should be concerned about early initiation and all of the lifelong health and financial and social impacts that can come from this. And the scenario I often think about in relation to zero alcohol products is a parent kind of with their alcoholic drink giving their kid the non-alcoholic version and sitting down and drinking with them at the same time, and the way that there's kind of mimicry of drug use behavior there, or alcohol use behavior there going, and the normalisation of that interaction, as well as the developing brand association and developing a palate to get past the bitter taste and all of the ways that might trigger early initiation. And yeah, I just think it's a very concerning kind of area. And I often get concerned about the way that the products are talked about as being kind of benign and probably maybe under-regulated. Probably have an important role as well for people that are abstaining. But yeah, it's early initiation that concerns me.
Thanks, Matt. And thanks to all who are putting questions in the chat. I love seeing the questions because I feel like there's probably already looking at the questions in the chat. There's new research questions coming in. So I'm going to pose some of these. So thank you, Molly, for your question. Compliments first for you, Ashley. Really wonderful talk and neat new articles. Molly's curious if zero alcohol drinks seem to be very popular among adolescents in Australia. Just noting we don't have any data on this in the US, but at least anecdotally they don't seem to be very popular yet. Maybe Ashley, do you want to kick off, and then Mia, if you've got anything to add around data on it, uptake?
Yeah, well, stay tuned. We do have some work hopefully to share soon from the perspective of adolescents, but I would say they don't seem to be amazingly popular so far. I think that taste aspect is there. Like they taste more like alcohol, and that's often off-putting to people who don't drink alcohol. So I guess that's why in particular my interest has gone towards how these are working as ads, because that if you don't need to drink them to be exposed to them as an ad. So that's where my thinking's been going. Mia, did you want to?
I think in Australia, more broadly, we're kind of lacking data about the consumption of these products in all groups. So yeah, definitely more work to be done in that space.
Yes, this is great. All right, more questions coming in. So question from Bridget, zero alcohol drinks that are most talked about are usually about beers. What about wine? I wonder if there would be a difference in perception from zero alcohol beer and zero alcohol wine. Another great question. Ashley, do you want to kick off with that one as well?
Sure. Yep. I agree that the ones most often talked about are beers. They've been the ones that have probably had the biggest marketing campaigns, so the highest awareness of them. What we've heard is that they might be the best tasting of them as well, or like at least best might be the wrong word, most closely resembling the alcoholic counterparts. It will be interesting to see what happens with the wines. I know certainly being over in Adelaide, there is research going into making better tasting zero alcohol wines. So I guess stay tuned and see how the industry goes with that, and whether they are discussed in different ways, I guess. But the ready to drink style of spirits like kind of ones are also there and talked about, and potentially of interest to adolescents as well. They're often a place that adolescents will start with alcohol. So,
Mia, Matt, if you want to jump in and add anything on that. Otherwise, Matt, I might throw this next question to you. And it kind of relates to what we were just talking, or what Ashley just alluded to there. What should we do about zero alcohol premixes that actually taste more like soft drinks and perhaps even look like a soft drink in terms of packaging? And I'm going to take advantage of their question because in the back of my mind has been a certain product that was released in Australia that was hard rated. There's been a lot of controversy, I guess, around that product. So yeah, wondering your thinking around those types of products. This
is the brand sharing and going in the opposite direction, right, with hard solo and hard rated. And it was good to see hard solo pulled replaced in the market. And there were a couple of instances of poisons hotline calls associated with young people, kids drinking, very young children drinking hard solo, thinking it was solo. So that was kind of concerning. It was good to see the community reaction to that, but it also showed that the ABAC approval process and the regulation of advertising of alcohol generally was left a bit wanting. And that ABAC pre-approved this product, and then had to kind of draw back on that once the complaints started rolling in. But it connects quite well to zero alcohol too, because the regulation of advertising of alcohol in Australia is well, it's self-regulated, and there's no proper legislation behind it. There's and also there's a bit of a mix of state and federal, so state and Commonwealth legislation there as well, and so just to do anything around and also fazans, like the branding of these products and labeling of things often comes under food legislation and not under liquor acts as well. So it's a very, very complicated legislative space, and trying to get movement on it would be a bit of a maze, I think.
Ashley, Mia, anything you want to add on that topic? I've only just had my eyes open to kind of how zero alcohol products are labelled and whatnot, and reading the food standards guidance around it, it kind of blew my mind a little bit, how free it was in terms of these products. And, you know, oh, maybe you have to put the number of standard drinks on the front, maybe you don't, maybe you have to have warning labels, maybe you don't, depending on whether it's zero or low alcohol. So yeah, I wonder if you have any thoughts to add to that.
I think it's also the implications of that, and Ashley touched on this, was that they can be sold in places where alcohol products can't be sold because they technically are classified as soft drinks. So every convenience store, supermarket that you walk into now will have some range of zero alcohol products. And I guess what does that do for just, the exposure to alcohol and alcohol-like products for young people?
Yeah, and that probably leads quite nicely to Samantha's comment, which Samantha kind of horrified me a little bit. What about mocktails? We recently saw a paint and sip event for 12 to 18-year-olds serving mocktails, normalising alcohol in all areas of life. I think that's probably a rhetorical question there, a bit concerning to see. I might move to Barry's question. Thanks, Barry. And Ashley, throw to you first on this one. Any plans to do a longitudinal cohort study to examine the timing and order of zero alcohol and alcohol initiation, and whether zero alcohol products might be associated with earlier alcohol initiation or not?
I think that would be really brilliant to do. I think no plans, but if anyone wants to talk to me about collaborating on something like that, I think that would be really valuable to have a look at. I think, again, there is a couple of issues there. There is the drinking them and also the exposure to them as ads, but I think that would be a really good way of understanding whether drinking them is playing a role in alcohol initiation. So.
Yeah, I think the longitudinal cohort is really going to be critical in terms of the temporal order of things. So yeah, that's a very obvious one. Mia, Matt, anything you want to add? Any further research questions, Mia or Matt, that you want to throw on the table?
How long do we have?
Yeah, it's a bit dangerous, isn't it? A little bit dangerous. I guess I was just going to throw one more question to you as well. We've been talking a little bit about the marketing side of things, and thinking about, I mean, alcohol and sports, unfortunately, are quite regularly intertwined in terms of the marketing side of things. Maybe me asking you a little bit about how is zero, I know because you've been doing a bit of work in this space, how are zero alcohol products featuring into sports sponsorship, marketing, etc.? Is there something going on there that we should be looking at, particularly around, we know that young people are watching sport, seeing these ads and so on?
Yeah, so the beer of the Olympics this year, the official beer, is a zero alcohol beer. And I've looked at, with my colleague Cass Wright, we've looked at sports sponsorship and zero alcohol products. And zero alcohol products are infiltrating all different types of sports, ranging from your everyday running events to AFL at the highest level. And yeah, as I kind of mentioned, what I'm interested in is the marketing that they're able to, in aligning with sport, it creates that kind of health halo. And then the fact that some of these products are then saying, well, we're electrolyte enhanced, will help you with your recovery after sport. Yeah, I think it's kind of, it's an interesting space, and it seems to just be growing. And I think the coverage of the Olympic sponsorship is kind of shown that, like, you know, well, they're paving the way because this is the first zero alcohol product that's really associated with such a high level sporting event. So it'll probably lead to more and more sporting sponsorship partnerships down the track.
All right, and Michael Livingston, hero of alcohol epidemiology in Australia, has posed the final question. And Michael, you didn't make, I don't know if you've made it an easy one or not. Michael says there's no real counterfactual, but teenage drinking has continued to basically decline. We know this. Is there really likely to be a problem here? Does anyone want to take it on?
I can
Final
have a
question, final minute. Go for it, Ashley.
So firstly, I think what we don't want to see is a reverse in that decline. And this is a relatively new space where we've certainly seen an explosion of marketing and investment in. So we, I guess, want to be cautious and monitor and see what effect that might or might not be having. The other thing I want to say is I want to draw a parallel with tobacco. And we've seen declines in smoking rates with tobacco, but that doesn't mean we want to stop. We want to keep driving them down further. So I think we want to continue to pay attention to what we can do to, as Matt was saying, to delay initiation, try and avoid early initiation of alcohol consumption. So keep the declines going.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, of course.
We have an example of this from tobacco. So, you know, when I was a kid back in the 80s, I could go down to the local store and buy a pack of Fags confectionaries, right? We are showing your age if you remember that. And that's been nationally banned for decades now. And the reason it was banned was because of the association between the mimicry of use and the lot that it was associated. The kids that purchased those products were associated with long-term smoking use. So zero alcohol is a lot more like zero alcohol beer is a lot more like beer than confectionery cigarettes was like cigarettes. So I think we should be, you know, suspicious about those mimicry behaviours and the way they are connected with long-term harms.
Yeah, and I think Bridget's made the good point here to end with great that teenage drinking is in decline, but that means that alcohol companies will work harder to get them to drink someday. So on that note, we have come to the end of our webinar. Ashley, brilliant presentation, caused a lot of conversation and clearly filling a much needed gap, and a lot of space for more evidence to be generated here. Mia, Matt, really appreciate you joining and sharing your insights. For those who are listening, thanks for coming along. If you're keen to hear what's up next, there's a break for next week with a public holiday on Anzac Day. But on Thursday, the 2nd of May, we have Stuart Kinner presenting on using cross-sectoral data linkage to explore the health trajectories of justice-involved people, opportunities and challenges. And just a reminder, NDARC Symposium, Friday, 20th of September in Sydney. Please do save the date. But again, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Mia and Matt. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.